comment,
and subscribe for more content.
Where's the notification bell?
It's to the right of you.
Oh.
Ooh, what's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of a Funko Popcast. I am DK Wrestler.
And I'm MD Shaddy.
And in today's podcast, of course, it is part 2 of the top 50 Funko Pops of 2022. Yesterday here on the channel, we did part 1, which if you guys haven't viewed that yet, definitely go check it out, especially in case the pop that you hope is number 1 for this list could possibly already be mentioned as terms to the top 50 list. But of course, here in part 2, we are going to be discussing about the top half of the list, starting out with number 25 and work our way until the number 1 Funko Pop of 2022. And we mentioned in the first part about how each of these pops were determined with the different ratings that we have, which of course, once again, will be listed in the description below of how everything was done. So without further ado, MD, are you ready for the top half of this list?
Yes, sir. There's definitely a lot of crazy pops here, and I'm ready to discuss.
All right, so coming in at number 25 to kick off this top half of the list, it is number 1223 in the Pop Disney lineup. From Emperor's New Groove, it is Devil Kronk. Now, this was a D23 exclusive shared with the Funko Shop, which had an overall hype rating of 9.0, detail of 7.9, and personal reaction of 8.6, giving it an overall score of 8.5 out of 10.
The one that got away, Devil Kronk. Yeah, pretty awesome pop. And I've tried to add this to my collection, but unfortunately there was some mix-up. Some of you guys may have heard about that, but still don't have this in my collection, so it's definitely something I'm going to have to buy pretty soon, because, yeah, this pop is awesome, and of course it is paired very, very well with that Angel Kronk.
Okay, moving on now to number 24 on the list. This is number 548 in the Pop Star Wars lineup. From the Book of Boba Fett, it is the Flocked Krishantan. Now, this was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive that was shared with GameStop, in which this had an overall hype of 7.6, detail of 9, and a personal reaction of 9.1, giving it an overall score of 8.57, 0.7 higher than the Devil Kronk.
Flocked Krishantan is an awesome pop, and this is one that I do own. There's a lot of cool detail with the texture of the fur, and then making it flock just makes so much sense, as well as the bits of armor and weaponry you get to see on this pop itself. Just such a really cool Star Wars pop.
Coming in at number 23 on this list, this is number 1255 in the Pop Television lineup. From The Simpsons, it is Jimbo Jones. Now, this was a New York Comic-Con exclusive shared with Toy Tokyo, which this has an overall hype of 8.5, detail of 8.7, and a personal reaction of 8.7, giving it an overall score of 8.63.
Jimbo Jones is sweet. I was really hoping that we would see this pop, and I'm thankful that we did this year, and I think it turned out really good. I like how the facial expression is, as well as the pose. I think that they kept it pretty simple, and that's what you need for an awesome Simpsons pop.
All right, moving on to number 22 on this list. This is number 1205 from the Pop Television lineup. This pop is also from The Simpsons. It is Nelson Muntz. Now, this was a Hot Topic exclusive released earlier in the year, which had an 8.8 in overall hype, detail in 8.3, and a personal reaction of 8.8, giving it an overall score of 8.63, the same score as the Jimbo Jones, except Nelson had a much higher overall hype and personal reaction rating, thus making it higher up on the list than Jimbo Jones.
Yeah, I mean, these two pops go side by side, but Nelson Muntz is definitely the better pop. The facial expression is even better with Nelson, with that large mouth, as well as the pose with the finger out, where he's basically saying his ha-ha catchphrase. So yeah, this is awesome. Super pumped that it was Hot Topic exclusive, and definitely one of the better Simpsons pops we've seen.
Coming in at number 21 on this list, This is number 4 for the Pop Deluxe Moments. From Metallica, it is the Master of Puppets Tour 1986 that features Cliff Burton, Lars Ulrich, James Hetfield, and Kirk Hammett. Now, this was a Walmart exclusive that was actually recently released within the last month, which this had an overall hype of 8.1, detail of 8.6, and a personal reaction of 9.3, giving it an overall score of 8.67, 0.04 higher than Nelson and Jimbo.
All of the new concert moments that we got are really awesome, but there is something about the Master of Puppets. I mean, what a cool album cover. So it's sweet that you get that on the back of the stage. And then the pops that you get with this is awesome as well. Altogether, it's got to be one of the best of the concert moments.
And before we move on to essentially the top 20, and we've now discussed this top or this bottom 5, I guess, of this top half of the list, are there any pops you think that either were a little too high and should have been on that bottom half of the list on yesterday's podcast? Or are these just a perfect like 21 to 25? For me, I think that a little bit of a spoiler in case you guys didn't listen to yesterday's pod, that I felt like Devil Kronk should have been a little bit lower, maybe somewhere around the same area that the Angel Kronk was for the bottom half of the list. I don't exactly remember actually at this point of what number that Angel Kronk was at, but maybe somewhere near there, and we could have had one of the pops that I mentioned that should have been in the top 25 fill in this part of the list.
Yeah, I feel like Devil Kronk might be a little bit too high, but I mean, it is this elusive pop for me now with a funny story behind it, at least. So I'm not too mad that it made the top 25, but those other 4 pops are definitely in a perfect spot. Those are all pretty elite pops for this year.
All right, so making it to number 20 on this list, this is number 10 in the pop comic covers for Marvel. From Venom Lethal Protector, it is the Glow in the Dark Venom. Now, this was a previews exclusive. This had an overall hype of 9.1, detail of 8.5, and personal reaction of 8.5, giving it an overall score of a solid 8.7 out of 10, 0.03 higher than the Master of Puppets Tour 1986.
This is a sweet comic book cover. I do own this as well. And the pop itself looks so cool. I love the way that Venom is posed, as well as the like slime that's coming out of his mouth. And he was put on a base, which I think was not necessarily needed, but I think that it makes this pop a lot better. And that cover itself is pretty sweet as well.
All right, coming in at number 19, this is number 1049 in the Pop Marvel lineup. From Moon Knight, it is the Glow in the Dark Khonshu. Now, this was a box lunch exclusive, which had an overall hype of 9.2, detail of 9.3, and a personal reaction of 7.7, giving it an overall score of 8.73, 0.03 higher than the Glow in the Dark Venom.
This pop is pretty sweet, and it's unlike a lot of pops that we see with the head mold, at least. And this is a really tall pop, which is pretty cool to see, especially when you're paying the normal price for a pop. Sometimes it's nicer for it to be a bit bigger. And overall, there's a ton of detail with this, and the glow is actually pretty good as well.
Coming in at number 18 on this list, this is number 112 in the Pop Retro Toys lineup. From the TMNT Power Rangers crossover set, it is Raphael as the Red Ranger. Now, this was a New York Comic-Con exclusive shared with the Funko Shop, which this had an overall hype of 8.5, detail of 9.0, and personal reaction of 8.8, giving it an overall score of 8.77 out of 10, 0.04 higher than the Glow in the Dark Khonshu.
I'm a huge fan of this crossover / matchup with TMNT and the Power Rangers, and Raphael is a perfect example of a pop that looks sweet in this format. I mean, Raph and the Red Ranger, of course, are both sporting the red attire. So I think that if they would have went with any other character for the Red Ranger, that would have been silly. Raphael just makes so much sense. And overall, this looks so cool.
All right, coming in at number 17, this is number 854 in the Pop Games lineup. From Sonic the Hedgehog, it is the Flocked Knuckles. Now, this was a TargetCon 2022 exclusive, which this had an overall hype of 8.8, detail of 8.0, and a personal reaction of 9.5, giving it an overall score of 8.77. The same as the Raphael's Red Ranger, except it had a higher overall hype and higher personal reaction rating, making it one spot higher up on the list.
This is freaking sweet, and we kind of knew that eventually we would get a Knuckles, and it's flocked. So it's really a perfect pop. And yeah, we've just been waiting so long for a new Knuckles from that OG original one that is some nightmare fuel. So finally we got the flocked Knuckles, and yeah, we're super pumped about that.
Coming in at number 16 on this list, this is number 114 in the Pop Rides lineup. From One Piece, it is the Luffy with Thousand Sunny. Now, this was recently released as a CCXP exclusive shared with the Funko Shop, which this had an overall hype rating of 9.1, detail of 9.9, which is the highest detail rating of this entire podcast, and a personal reaction rating of 7.8, giving it an overall score of 8.93 out of 10.
Luffy with 1,000 Sunny is a wicked pop rides. I mean, yeah, not surprised that it does have the highest amount of detail, because look at the detail on this thing. The detail is insane. The pop itself is pretty basic, but really you are buying this for that ride with the 1,000 Sunny. I mean, just an incredible pop.
Coming in at number 15 on this list, this is number 3 in the Pop comic covers for DC Comics. From Batman, it is Poison Ivy. Now, this was a Walmart exclusive release during the Earth Day reveals, in which this had an overall hype of 9.2, detail of 9.1, and a personal reaction of 8.5, giving it an overall score of 8.93 out of 10, which is the same score as the Luffy with the 1,000 Sunny, except it had a higher overall hype and higher personal reaction rating, thus making it one spot higher on the list than Luffy.
This is an awesome comic book cover, and I'm kind of surprised that it made it this high, because like there's really not a ton going on, but I think it is perfect for this cover where she is kind of lounging on that branch and it has the moss. So I can understand the detail rating and all that, and definitely a comic book cover that I'm still looking out for, because Poison Ivy is basically my favorite Batman character.
Coming in at number 14 on this list, this is number 567 in the Pop Star Wars lineup. From Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, it is Anakin Skywalker. Now, this was a New York Comic-Con exclusive shared with Amazon, in which this had an overall hype rating of 9.6, detail of 8.4, and a personal reaction rating of 8.8, giving it an overall score of 8.93, which is the same score as both the Luffy with 1,000 Sunny Pop rides and the Poison Ivy Pop comic covers, except this pop had a higher overall hype and personal reaction rating than both of the Luffy and Poison Ivy pops, therefore making it 2 spots higher up on the list.
This is an awesome Star Wars pop, Anakin from Attack of the Clones. I think this has been long awaited. We've definitely gotten quite a few different versions of Anakin, but now we have this one. Unfortunately, the movie's not that great, but this pop is.
Coming in at number 13, this is number 1252 in the Pop television lineup. From The Simpsons, it is Homer in Hedges, which this was an Entertainment Earth exclusive, and this had an overall hype of 9.2, detail of 8.6, and a personal reaction rating of 9.1, giving it an overall score of 8.97, 0.04 higher than the last 3 pops, including Anakin Skywalker.
What a cool pop. And of course, I'm always happy when we do get a new Simpsons pop. But this one's a little bit special because it is one of those meme kind of moments. And we have been seeing a lot more kind of meme-ish pops recently. And I think that they nailed this one. I think it looks really cool how he is kind of sunken into those hedges and really does show off exactly what the meme is.
Coming in at number 12 on this list, this is a 3-pack for the Pop Rocks lineup. From Blink 182, it is Mark Hoppus, Travis Barker, and Tom DeLonge. And this is, as you see on your guys' screen, the common 3-pack that was first released, which had an overall hype rating of 8.5, detail of 9.3, and personal reaction of 9.1, giving it an overall score of 8.97 out of 10, which is the same score as Homer in the Hedges. And the rating system was a little bit difficult for these pops because both of these pops had the exact same personal reaction rating of 9.1, except then you had to decide which rating was higher between overall hype and detail. And it was Blink 182's detail rating of 9.3 that was higher than the overall hype rating of 9.2 for Homer and the Hedges, thus making it higher up on the list because of that higher rating.
This is a pretty sweet 3-pack, and I think that all Blink 182 fans are definitely happy that we finally have a Tom DeLonge pop with this 3-pack. Obviously, we have had Mark and we have had Travis as the singular pops, but now with this 3-pack, you get all of them, and they come with all their instruments, which is awesome, and the mic stands, which is just such cool added detail to this, as well as them being naked, which is pretty dang funny.
Coming in at number 11 on this list, this is number 38 in the Pop Albums lineup. From Snoop Dogg, it is Doggy Style, in which this is just a common Pop Albums, which had an overall hype rating of 9.1, detail of 9, and personal reaction of 8.9, giving it an overall score of 9.0 on the dot out of 10, which is 0.03 higher than the Blink 182 3-pack and the Homer in the Hedges.
This is an awesome comic book cover that people have been anticipating for a while. All the Snoop Dogg pops are sweet, but there is something about Doggy Style and then having that younger version of Snoop right there on the cover. So cool. I still do need to add this to my collection, but it's definitely one of those albums that has to make the cut for my collection.
All right, so we finished basically that top 20 right there, and we're about to approach the top 10 portion of this top 50 list overall between both parts of the podcast. Are there any pops here, MD, that you feel should have been a little bit higher or a little bit lower on the list? I think I would be pretty satisfied with all of these pops as terms to their spot on the list. And I'm a little surprised that Snoop Doggy Dogg did not make it into the top 10 portion of the list.
I think everything's pretty much good. The Poison Ivy, I think, could have been lower on the list. I think it was ranked a little bit high, though I do really like that pop. And the Flocked Knuckles, I definitely think could have easily broken the top 10. So it's surprising to see him at number 17.
All righty, so now we are here, the top 10 portion of this entire top 50 Funko Pops of 2022 between both of the parts we have done. So coming in at number 10, this is number 13 in the Pop VHS covers. From National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, it is the Clark Griswold, which this pop was a Walmart exclusive with an overall hype of 9.5, detail of 9.5, and a personal reaction of 8.0, giving it an overall score of a solid 9 out of 10, the same as the Doggy Style Pop albums, except the fact that it had a higher overall hype and detail rating, thus just sliding into the top 10, unlike Snoop Doggy Dogg, which I guess I'll mention since normally I would let MD just talk about the pops. I think this pop, I'm surprised it made it in the top 10, but I think it could have been a little bit higher had this pop been glow in the dark.
Yeah, I think that's basically exactly what I was going to say. This is an awesome pop. Kind of surprised to see it in the top 10, but also, yeah, it needed to be glow in the dark, and unfortunately it wasn't. So maybe that's why it didn't rank a little bit higher.
Okay, making it to number 9 on this list. This is a 2-pack from the At Icons lineup from Jack in the Box. It is the Skeleton Jack and Monster Taco, which this was a Funko Shop exclusive, which had an overall hype rating of 9.3, detail of 9.2, and a personal reaction rating of 8.6, giving it an overall score of 9.03, 0.03 higher than both the Clark Griswold Pop VHS covers and the Doggy Style Pop albums.
It's not very often that we get a 2-pack for the Ad Icons lineup, so it's really sweet to see Skeleton Jack and the Monster Taco. I do have the other Jack in the Box pop, so this is something that I will have to add to my collection because look how cool that is. I mean, you got the skeleton costume, which is pretty interesting and cool for Jack in the Box, and then the Monster Taco is just such an odd looking pop with such great detail. I'm not surprised that this is in the top 10.
Coming in at number 8 on this list, this is number 104 in the Pop Retro Toys lineup from the TMNT and Power Rangers lineup. It is Leonardo as the Blue Ranger. Now, this was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive shared with Toy Tokyo, in which this had an overall hype rating of 9.4, detail of 8.9, and a personal reaction rating of 8.8, giving it an overall score of 9.03, the same score as the Skeleton Jack and Monster Taco 2-pack, except it had a higher overall hype and personal reaction rating than the 2-pack, thus making it higher on the list.
Here's another great example of what I was talking about earlier, where you have the blue Ninja Turtle as well as the Blue Ranger. So you got to slap them together. And Leo is my favorite turtle, so I am happy that this one ranked higher. I think that this does look sweet, but I think it's interesting that the Ranger part of this has the size, which could have made sense for Raphael, definitely. But no, this one's awesome, and I can't wait to see what else we get if we do get any more of these mashup TMNT and Power Rangers pops.
Coming in at number 7 on this list, this is number 5 in the Pop VHS covers from Toy Story. It is Woody with Lenny the Binoculars. Now, this was an Amazon exclusive in which it had an overall hype rating of 8.9, detail of 8.7, and a personal reaction rating of 9.9, giving it an overall score of 9.17 out of 10.
This is an amazing VHS covers. Of course, me and DK are huge fans of Toy Story, so it's awesome to see this as a cover. Hopefully we get the other Toy Story movies as well, but right here it's perfect, and they went with Woody holding Lenny, which I think is awesome. We don't have a pop of Lenny, so it's cool to see him in kind of the buddy form, especially when it is on the covers.
Coming in at number 6 on this list, this is number 1175 in the Pop animation lineup. From Yu-Gi-Oh! It is Summon Skull. Now, this was a CCXP exclusive shared with Target, in which it had an overall hype rating of 8 out of 10, a detail rating of 9.6, and a personal reaction rating of 9.9, which I do want to mention is the highest personal reaction rating of this entire podcast, along with, that's the same thing for the Woody Pop VHS covers, in which this had an overall score of 9.17 out of 10, the same score as Woody. And this was the same situation involving a couple of pops back, where it was the same exact rating for one of the categories, being personal reaction with 9.9. And it all came down to who had the higher rating as terms to the overall hype and detail section, which for the highest Summon Skull rating was detail with 9.6, and Woody's was 8.9 for overall hype, which obviously 9.6 being higher, thus making Summon Skull one spot higher up on the list than Woody from Toy Story.
Summon Skull is amazing. I love this pop. There's so much detail that has gone into it. I love the green eyes. And this was my most anticipated Yu-Gi-Oh pop. Right when we got that first wave years ago, I said, we need a Summon Skull. And it took a while, but we finally have it. So yeah, definitely a lot of hype with this one.
Coming in at number 5, we are now in the top 5 portion of this list. This is number 111 in the Pop Rides lineup. From One Piece, it is the Luffy with Going Merry. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with Hot Topic, in which it had an overall hype of 9.7, which is the highest overall hype rating of this entire podcast, with a detail rating of 9.6 and a personal reaction rating of 8.3, giving it an overall score of 9.2 out of 10, 0.03 higher than the Summon Skull and Woody Pop VHS covers.
It's really cool to see both of the Luffy pop rides being added to this list because they're both so great. And this one, I think, does have a little bit of an edge up for one reason, and that being that the pop isn't just positioned on the rides or somewhere in the rides, but he actually has like his leg up. So he is posed with the vehicle itself, which a lot of the times you don't see with pop rides, especially back a few years ago.
All right, so coming in at number 4 on this list, this is number 1281 in the Pop television lineup. From Blue's Clues, it is Steve, in which this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with the Funko Shop, in which it had an overall hype rating of 9.5, detail rating of 8.6, and a personal reaction rating of 9.6, giving it an overall score of 9.23 out of 10, 0.03 higher than the Luffy with Going Merry.
Steve is awesome, and I think that we knew we were going to get this eventually when we got the two Blues Clues pops with the flocked one and the common. So it's awesome that we got Steve. He has the handy dandy notebook, which I think is perfect. And this is one of those pops where you can see this out of the box and you know exactly who it is, especially when it's a human character. That says a lot about the pop. So I'm not surprised that this is in the top 5 of the year.
Coming in at number 3 on this list, this is number 1269 in the Pop Movies lineup. From Borat, of course, it's Borat himself, which this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with Toy Tokyo, in which this had an overall hype rating of 9.1, detail of 9.2, and personal reaction rating of 9.5, giving it an overall score of 9.27 out of 10, 0.04 higher than Steve with the handy dandy notebook.
Borat, this is so sweet, and I do have this pop in my collection. Just so awesome. The detail is there with the handbag as well as the USA flag, and then you have that mustache. And again, it's another great example of a pop that you can see out of box and you can just tell exactly who it is. And yeah, I do think that this has a bit more detail and maybe a little bit more of I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it is kind of the better pop over Steve, though Steve is an awesome pop as well.
All right, so moving on to number 2 on this list. And I'll be honest right now, a little surprised this did make it to number 2, honestly. This is number 1 in the Pop Deluxe moments, I guess specifically for the movies. From Home Alone, it is the Kevin, Marv, and Harry, in which this was a Walmart exclusive, which had an overall hype rating of 9.4, detail of 9.7, and a personal reaction rating of 9.5, giving it an overall score of 9.53 out of 10.
I'm not surprised at all that this made it to the top 5. I mean, this is crazy, unlike anything we've ever seen with Funko, and I hope that we do see a lot more pops like this, where you have this deluxe kind of moment where really there's a whole lot going on with this, and it basically just looks like you're watching the movie, but in pop form.
All right, so before we move over to our number one spot, we do have some honorable mentions, but I guess just before we get to our honorable mentions, this is a pretty solid, I guess you could say, top 10 portion of the list. In my opinion, I do think that the Skeleton Jack and Monster Taco should not been in the top 10. I think it was a little bit too high. Maybe one of the pops from the top 20 portion could have made it in that part. And I think as terms to the top 5 portion, I think it's pretty solid, especially when we get to the number one pop of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. The Skeleton Jack and Monster Taco are a really cool 2-pack, but I don't think they're top 10 of the year. Maybe somewhere in that top 15, though.
All right, so now moving on to our honorable mentions for this list. And we thought we had mentioned this considering that there were pops that when we were trying to decide for this list, we couldn't agree on, or example, pops had not released yet, or by the time that we would record and get this list figured out that they would release afterwards. So here are the honorable mentions. I'll mention mine first. We thought of between, I believe, 3 to 5 honorable mentions for this list. So the first honorable mention I have on this list is the Jeremy Jam from Parks and Recreation. I thought I'd give this an honorable mention for a couple of reasons. First is that Parks and Recreation did pretty good this year in terms of Funko Pops, but of course it didn't make the list because it was one of those pops that we simply could not agree on to add to this list, but I thought I would add it as an honorable mention already. The next pop I have on this list is the glow-in-the-dark Infinite Deku with Eerie. That was a Funko Shop exclusive, and this is one of those cases where I actually forgot about this pop. We actually tried discussing what My Hero Academia pops we could add onto this list, and there wasn't really too many appealing My Hero Academia pops, but totally forgot about this one that even though it was announced in 2021, because it was a Funko Shop exclusive, it did not release until 2022, and it was one of the last Funko Shop exclusives from recent memory that I could think of where people had pretty much crashed the Funko Shop website and it had sold out very quickly, which barely happened in 2022 as it is. So this pop definitely needed to have an honorable mention. If I would have remembered it, it probably would have been a pop on this top 50 list, to be honest. Another pop that I would add is pretty much a set, and that is the new Spider-Man No Way Home set. And that's because we were under the assumption that due to licensing issues, these pops were not able to release until 2023. So we didn't end up adding them to the list. And then there was a first to market release in Malaysia that happened where all the pops, including the 3-pack that would be for Amazon, the 8-pack that would be going to Walmart, and a lot of the singular ones did release then. And then recently in the States, we did see the release of the metallic Green Goblin going to Box Lunch. And then there was a lot of the common ones like the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and especially also the metallic Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man that went to Hot Topic had released already. So it's unfortunate because now that means that no pops from Spider-Man No Way Home would be eligible for the 2023 list because they already released in 2022. But we'll probably get an honorable mention, honestly, on next year's list. And then the last honorable mention I have is the Utica Takeover 3-pack from The Office. And this pop actually released this month in Australia. However, there was no posting to look up as terms to the overall hype, which is a huge thing about adding pops to the list, is that there needs to be some sort of posting from a very reliable source and retailer so that we can look at the comments for overall hype. But unfortunately, there was no posting involved with that. So unfortunately, the Utica Takeover 3-pack could not make it into the top 50 list. Otherwise, this definitely would have made it no problem because normally we do have an Office Funko Pop on our top 50 list. Those are by honorable mentions. What are yours, MD?
All right, so for honorable mentions, the first I have is Sugar Mama from Proud Family. This is a really sweet pop. I feel like it was the most hyped pop of this wave of Proud Family pops. And it's really cool because you also have the Pop and Buddy where you get Puff along with her. So yeah, there's some cool details going on with this pop, especially with the way that the eyes are like kind of shut, which is different for Funko to do something like that. So I think that that's pretty sweet. The second honorable mention I have is Dude Love. Really awesome pop for the WWE wave. I believe it was in the same wave as the Alexa Bliss that we talked about. And yeah, this is just awesome. There's a lot of detail going on with it. And who wouldn't love a Dude Love pop in their collection? And then lastly, the last honorable mention that I have before we make our way over to the number one pop of the year, I have the Bait exclusive glow in the dark Astro Boy. This is really cool. I like how you can see his innards on one half, and then making it glow in the dark is awesome because those wires and some of those kind of like colorful pieces that are inside Astro Boy actually glow up. And I think that it's going to look pretty sweet in person. I haven't seen it in person, but it's a pop that I definitely want to get into my collection, especially being a Bait exclusive.
All right, so now moving on to the number one pop. Coming in at number one, the best Funko Pop of 2022. This is number 1259 from the Pop Movies lineup. From E.T. the Extraterrestrial, it is the glow-in-the-dark E.T. and Elliot moments. This had an overall hype of 9.4, detail of 9.6, and a personal reaction of 9.7, giving it an overall score of 9.57 out of 10, 0.04 higher than the Home Alone Deluxe moments. And I'll be honest, I don't know about you, but I certainly am not surprised that this is the number one pop of 2022. I feel like a lot of people would definitely agree that this is the number one pop of 2022. And I mean, I don't know what you got. I mean, I'm sure you got some good things to say about this pop also.
Yeah, this pop is really cool. I mean, the detail that you have with the trees and the moon, and then it's also glowing in the dark. And then you have a pop that essentially is doing the best job of flying that we've seen with a pop. I don't know if we've actually ever seen anything like this in pop form. And it's kind of like a Pop and Buddy. So you get so many different elements. You get the detail, you get the glow, you get something that's kind of new, and you get a Pop and Buddy. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all that this is the number one pop of the year because honestly, I think this might be the best pop of all time.
Anyways, guys, that is going to be the end of this podcast here. If you enjoyed this edition of a Funko Popcast, or I should also say both parts of our top 50 Funko Pops of 2022, make sure you smash that like button. Comment in the comment section below and let us know what was your favorite Funko Pop of 2022. Was it the ET moments? Was it one of the other pops we mentioned? Let us know in the comment section below. Press the subscribe button for more content like this podcast and any other videos we do on this channel in the future, and press the little bell beside it to be notified of when that future content gets released. And if you guys haven't yet, follow us on all of our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at a Funko Popcast. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this edition of a Funko Popcast, and we hope to see you guys next week for the first podcast of 2023, the top 10 wish list for 2023. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.
Peace in, peace out.